Okay, I'll move on to item 4 with and spoke up about the housing campaign, not Ella, and Mitch's name was noted as Nitch. Other than that, which I'm sure they can be fixed. I'd like to. Was there any issues with this, with the meeting minutes? Okay. The motion reads that the Representation Board approves the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 10th of the 4th, 2025 as a true and accurate record of the proceedings. Can I get a mover for this? Nicole, and Mitch, would you second? Yeah. Is it?
I just looked at the minutes of the previous meeting. It says Dylan Boddicker reported that CEO of Uni Lodge said something. Is that meant to be?
I'm sure we could get that changed. But yeah,
just thought I'd add that to the notes.
Thank you, Cooper. That's it. Where does it say that? Is it?
Yeah, whatever. Part of the housing campaign response, paragraph 2 in the motion.
All right. Okay. We'll look to get those changed. All in favour of this motion? All those against? All those abstaining? That is carried. I'm going to move on to something that's done at Academic Board, which is celebrating success. Would anyone like to come forward with something that they'd like to celebrate a success of the Guild last month? Dylan.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to celebrate. I just had, it was prior to this meeting. I know you were present there as well. Had a really good meeting with the acting postgraduate student committee president. Just going through a lot of the good work that they have been doing. A lot of work on representing postgraduate students, but particularly a lot of hard work on high degree by research students. We're talking things like laptops to be provided to students. We're talking things like improved training. So I think it's a really good thing and a great success on the part of Mitch. He's a real gem to have around the office, and everyone appreciates him. So yeah.
Thank you. Anyone else like to talk about anything? I'll move on to item 5, which is matters arising. I don't believe there was any matters, and the item's not for discussion. There was none. So item 7, which is public question time. Are there any questions that you have for the reports? Yeah.
It was pertaining to Dylan's report before about the MOU and discussions with the university. I looked at the report before, and it was about well, at first I was interested as what was discussed there, and there was also reference to a potential deal with the university between Ben Gurion University in Israel. So I think if Dylan could expand on that, that would be useful.
Yeah, so there has been a deal, an agreement, an exchange agreement that was signed. Despite me being quoted on this, I think from the meeting that we had, Razan was present as well. Maybe from 2018 or 2019, I think was when I think it was the Humanities Department entered into an exchange agreement with Ben Gurion University. We picked that up through listings on the Curtin website and have raised concerns with it. It's something that the university has been connected to. So I met with the Deputy Vice-Chancellor International just yesterday to get a follow-on from that. We made it clear that we want that partnership to end, and it seemed like the university was willing for that to happen. I'm just waiting on to get something formally in writing to confirm that that is the case. So hopefully by next meeting, we should have something in writing confirming that that doesn't exist anymore. And I note it's not on the website anymore. It's not listed on the website. So that's a positive change. If following on from that, it actually means that that agreement's no longer active. I'll just add to that. Sorry, I think there was a couple of students from that have used that partnership over the course of its existence. My understanding was that currently there is no students from Curtin at Ben Gurion University and no students from Ben Gurion University at Curtin, either at Bentley or any of the global campuses. And I don't believe that at least from what I've heard from the university, is that there aren't students that are going to be welcomed here, or vice versa, given the current climate. But again, we want that deal to not exist anymore. So hopefully we'll have something more locked in and in writing by the next meeting. I'm happy to share.
Good with that. Are there any other questions, reports? Too easy. I'll move on to item 8 then, which are the reports. Starting off with the President's report, which was submitted. Dylan?
Thank you. So a few updates from since this report was written. We had a successful AGM, which was held in Corit. It's fantastic to see, and a strong reminder that students do care about the representation and direction of the Guild. It was great to field some questions there and take on some constructive recommendations regarding the Guild's offering at commercial outlets. Since then, Ben and I have had further meetings with the Assessment 2030 program, focusing on how we can ensure faculty representatives are genuinely involved in shaping assessment design of this new framework. I've also met with the WA Minister for Tertiary and International Education, Tony Booty, alongside other WA Guild presidents. I raised concerns around freedom of speech on campus, student housing standards, and the need for university governance reform. Following this, I have formally written to the Minister urging all student accommodation be included in the Residential Tenancy Act. Student housing has been a big focus. I've met with affected students and sat down this morning with the Deputy Vice-Chancellor Academic and the Director of Accommodation and Community Services to discuss lighting, fencing and other improvements, particularly older housing stock. And today I also met with Chantel from Make Renting Fair WA, and we're working together on a survey and advocacy plan to roll out in semester 2. From the report, as Jack mentioned earlier, the working group from the Disclosure, Divestment and Ethical Investment Agreement, which is the MOU that the Guild entered into with the university after the Gaza Solidarity encampment, which I believe is still 1 year ago today, was still live, so it's just under a year old. This MOU. We met 2 times in the last reporting period, and progress does include we're working on finalising supervisor training for research students, which is on track for semester 2, and that's been working with Mitch in the postgraduate space as well. Finalisation on the fact sheet for third-party use of student work as well is well and truly on track to be delivered in time for semester 2. Discussions are ongoing around public transparency for annual disclosures. The Guild is pushing for a formal published document rather than a limited listing of what's currently on the National Resilience webpage. And as I spoke with earlier, we've expressed concern over Curtin's exchange MOU with Ben Gurion University. We are buoyed by the news that Curtin is seeking to end this partnership in some form, and we'll update this board when we receive written confirmation of such. At the last academic board, the Guild raised serious delays in the academic misconduct process, some taking up to 120 days just to issue a formal allegation. We're working with further engagement at the moment with the Office of the Academic Registrar. Our federal election Enrol to Vote campaign helped over 300 students update their enrolment or enrol to vote for the first time, and we assisted with the Don't Risk Dutton campaign via social media. Operationally, construction is underway for the new student kitchen. Opening is expected very soon. It's been more delayed than we would like. outside of our control in relation to contractors. But a big thanks is in order for Vernon, who's really taken leadership with this as managing director to help get it across the line and making sure that our contractors are able to keep to their word and get it delivered. And finally, the executive is developing a proposal for the Guild to take on a greater role in food security on campus, following the closure of the in-person Curtin Community Pantry, and any approach will need to be sustainable, equitable and connected to wraparound services.
Thank you, Dylan. Are there any questions? I'll move on to item 8.2, which is the Vice President Education Report, which I submitted late. I'm happy to take it as read, and also like to note what Dylan had said about a meeting about Assessment 2030. Other than that, nothing new in this report that has happened this week. Are there any questions? I'll move on to item 8.3, the Vice President Sustainability and Welfare Report. Razan.
Thank you, Ben. On Welfare Week in 2024, Jackie introduced Sustainability Week. There were 2 Sustainability Weeks, one in semester 1 and one in semester 2. This year, I took the decision to replace the semester 1 Sustainability Week with Welfare Week. And so that was introduced for the first time. The inaugural event was, as the name suggests, a week long and included a number of activities. To list them: a morning campus walk, free breakfast, dark hot chocolate giveaways, a women's defense class, which I'll let Bridget speak on later, free STI checks, and this was also alongside the pop-up thrift store. Each activity was selected for a reason. So, for example, the dark chocolate is scientifically proven to be beneficial for mental health and mood. The morning walk was to encourage weekly exercise goals, which the World Health Organization recommends. And on the side, the pop-up thrift store raised money for the Zonta House Refuge Association. They're a specialist provider of family and domestic violence services for women in Perth. I do commend Bridget for the idea and execution of the women's defense classes, which I'll let her speak on later. However, it was very popular. These activities proved strongly successful, mostly the free breakfast and the pop-up thrift store, which was incredibly popular, even more so than last year. As a result, the Curtin Student Guild was able to donate about $1,100 to the Refuge House. I would like to commend Jackie as VPA, that's right, VPA, and the events team, Jess, Kyla, and Beck, for helping me execute this. And I hope this is a tradition that the Guild can continue for years to come to encourage students to take a break and focus on their welfare and well-being. An update on the Recycling Hub: it can now be expected that it will be ready to launch within 1 to 2 weeks. The Recycling Hub, which will be placed in level 3 of the library, will offer students and staff the opportunity to recycle 5 different items, which have been finalized to be batteries, plastic and metal bottle caps, beauty products and packaging, empty blister packs, and office supplies. I'd like to thank Jackie for initiating the project in 2024 and the Fremantle Men's Shed for building the hub for us from scratch. On the smart bins that will utilize the 10-cent national scheme, the smart bins, which will gamify the sustainable student experience, is in the app creation stage of its development. The app will allow students to access fun perks that can be used on campus. I'd like to thank Red Bull, who are not here, for accepting to be the sole beverage partner on this project and contributing it. The plan is to roll this out by next semester, or technically before next semester, for use next semester. On the lolly wall, I'd like to thank Vernon and the commercial team for their work on this and their help. Within 2 weeks, the lolly wall will feature halal and plant-based lollies for all students, as well as sugar-free lollies to be able to enjoy. So keep an eye on social media for that update. Student mental health and wellbeing group, an update on that. Back in April, a mental health framework was produced as a result of the Student Mental Health and Wellbeing Working Group, which the Curtin Student Guild was a part of, with the 2024 and 2025 VPSW as student representatives for each year. As a result, students will start to see better mental health resources and services on campus. For example, all students should be able to access the My Wellbeing tab on their Oasis homepage. Reading from the action task of the framework, the aim was to integrate support services on relevant Curtin web pages where students facing adversity are likely to seek assistance, such as parking appeals, financial aid pages, and academic status. So this has been fully reflected on the My Wellbeing page. As a result, the working group has dissolved because it is now in action. And that is it. I will be happy to take any questions at all on anything I have discussed.
Are there any questions for Razan?
Bridget has a question.
Yes, Bridget.
Can you tell us what lollies you'll be, the Guild will be providing on the lolly wall?
That will be a surprise. I know what it is, but it'll be a surprise. One of them will be snakes. I can tell you that much. Thank you, Mitch, for that. Yeah, I believe I've answered that question. Thank you, Bridget.
Are there any more questions? If not, I'll move on to item 8.4, which is the Faculty of Business and Law Representatives Report. Nicole.
I'm happy to take mine as read. I would just like to note that I did have 2 more meetings that I attended after submitting the report, which was the Learning and Teaching FCC, which is monthly, and which within it we just discussed courses which would be deactivated, what would replace it and such. Nothing much to note from there. And also I had an update with student engagement earlier and found out more opportunities that the business and law faculty would want to pull out. But that is all I have to say. I'm happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions? Okay, let's move on to item 8.5, which is the Faculty of Science and Engineering Representative Cooper.
Yep, I'm happy to take my report as read and any questions on any of the meetings I attended.
Yes, Mitch.
Are you working on any projects other than attending meetings?
We are getting back into our assignment feedback campaign. At the moment, I've just been helping out with everyone else's campaigns, but none specifically for science and engineering yet.
Are there any more questions for Cooper? I'll move on to item 8.6 then, which is the Health Science Representative Report.
I'm happy to take my report as read and can answer any questions if needed.
Are there any questions for Rabab? To the Faculty of Humanities Report. Tom.
I'm happy to take mine as read and I'll take any questions.
Are there any questions for Tom? If not, we'll move to the item 8.8, which is the Student Assist Report. Joanne?
Nothing further to add. Happy to answer questions.
Are there any questions for Joanne regarding the report? Yeah, I'll move on to item 8.9, which is the International Students Committee President Report, which was submitted late, Zephyr.
Yeah, just I'm happy to take my report as read, but just after I submitted the report, I had a meeting with one of the journalism students, and they wanted to know what sort of hardships do international students go in terms of paying their tuition fees and how much contribution is international students having in the Australian gig economy. So that's that, and yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions regarding that.
Are there any questions for Zephyr? On to the Postgraduate Students Committee President Report. Mitch.
Yeah, so you should have seen my report's just been circulated. It was missing from the agenda pack, but it's there now. But I'll take it as read. If there's any questions, go for it.
If there's no questions for Mitch, I'll move on to the Queer Officers Report. Morgan.
I'm happy to take my report as read. Happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for Morgan? Okay. I'll move on to the Women's Officer's report. Bridget?
I'm happy to take everything as read. I'd just like to have a little update. Yesterday, Morgan, Lauren, and I had our equity Gals and Pals party. I would argue it was a success. With how many? About 30 people coming, which roughly that. But yeah, it was really good to see such a big turnout to what would otherwise be quite a small event. And I'd also like to yap about the women's self-defense class, which was also a very big success. It was something that I wanted to do pre-election because I did it like 10 years ago, and 30 people signed up to it, and it was a really great event, and I think the Guild should be doing it as a regular thing. Happy to answer questions.
Are there any questions from Sam?
What type of defense was it?
I can't remember the exact martial arts.
Like the lolly wall.
I know it was created by a woman and it was specifically for street fighting, but I will note that and come back to you.
I'm satisfied with the answer.
Thank you. Is there any further questions for Bridget? Okay, I'll move on to the Accessibility Officer's report. Lorian?
All right, hang on. Let me just pull up what I wrote in my report. Because I did want to talk about. Sorry. And there we go. Okay. Yep. So just on talking on things. So the Faculty of Business and Law has been running an accessibility project that I've been working alongside them as a student-led project to improve accessibility in the faculty. So over the past sort of month, they sort of put out an EOI for students. I think they had around half a dozen students who were sort of interested and came to a workshop about design thinking and how to generate ideas. 3 students submitted a sort of proposal, and as on the shortlist, the panel to select a successful project out of the 3. While there was capacity for 2 projects, we decided to go with 1 because of the 2 projects that looked most had the most potential. One of them was quite short on details, and the student we reached out to the student to ask for more details, and they didn't supply any. So we went with 1 around improving awareness of hidden disabilities. So that will be happening in the background. The other thing I wanted to talk about is the Auslan course student discount. So I found a provider that of Auslan courses. It's online and self-paced, and they're willing to provide discounts for students for a number of courses, which is really exciting. So currently, just in the middle of undergoing the process of getting that sort of formalized on the Guild end and sort of available. And then we'll look at launching it for students hopefully sometime in the next month. Other than that, I'm happy to take everything else as read. Is there any questions?
There are no questions. I'll move on to the Higher Education Developments report which was submitted. Are there any comments to this report that anyone would like to add? I'll move on to the motion that the Representation Board notes the reports. Please are there any comments to this? Could I please get would anyone like to move this motion? Morgan? Anyone to second? All those in favour? All those against? That's carried. I'd also like to move back to item 4. Would it be appropriate for the motion that the representation board notes the minutes of the postgraduate student committee? This is moved by Mitch. Would you like to add anything to it?
So this is something that because the PSC didn't really meet last year, we never got minutes to Reps board, but since we've started meeting again and have a full committee, ISC and PSC minutes are supposed to come to representation board. They're in the agenda pack. You can read, it's only 2 pages.
Are there any comments on this? Already against that the representation board notes the minutes of the postgraduate students committee. This is moved by Mitchell Craig. Is there anyone that was wanting to second? Dylan, second. All those in favour of this motion? All those against? That is carried unanimously. I'd like to move on to now item 9, which is the items for discussion resolution, starting with 9.1, which is the Curtin Student Charter, and the motion reads that the representation board discusses and recommends that the Guild Council endorse the approval of the new student charter. As this is moved by Dylan, give you an opportunity to speak to it.
Thank you. I'm pleased that the Guild played a central role in the development of the new student charter, working in partnership with the university to secure meaningful reforms that strengthen student rights and representation. From the outset, we advocated for a charter that genuinely reflects the student experience and results deliver just that. The new charter removes punitive student charter breaches, formally recognises the Guild's representative role, and expands student rights around feedback, academic freedom and participation. It's been endorsed by the working group and is moving through the university approvals process. I want to particularly thank Joanne and Andrew from Student Assist and Razan, our Vice President, Sustainability and Welfare, for their commitment throughout this process, and their contributions were instrumental in shaping a charter that is grounded more in student rights, responsibilities and that spirit of partnership. We're proud of this work and really looking forward to seeing it be endorsed by the Guild. For us to be able to just have a discussion here about it if we want to discuss it, and then it will be coming up to the academic board meeting, which is happening on the 30th of this month.
Zan, is there anything as the second that you'd like to add?
I will acknowledge that initially there was anxiety around the idea of the student charter being reviewed and honestly written again. However, every step of the way down to the nitty-gritty choice of words, we made sure there was no opportunity for the student charter to be anything but supportive of what it means to be a student. That's freedom of speech, critical thinking, respect, and recognising the importance of the Curtin Student Guild at this university. If I can choose my favourite part of the student charter, VPSW picks, it would be item 5 under responsibilities, which reads, demonstrate courage by standing up for what's right and doing the right thing, which I believe summarises the charter and what it means to be critical, ethical in an increasingly difficult world. It's moments like these that makes me proud of the Curtin Student Guild. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you. Is there anyone here that would like to add anything to the discussion or add any comments or have any questions? Yes, Mitch?
Dylan, how long had it been since the student charter was updated?
I believe 2008, actually, off the top of my head. I was scraping for that. Yeah, 2008 was the last time. A little factoid to that is that it said at the time that it was developed alongside the Student Guild, and from what I can find, that wasn't actually the case. It was a bit of a fib on the part of the university, but this one well and truly was, which I think is quite good. To sort of talk you through the process of it, the Vice-Chancellor initiated this review. I think a review in of itself is fine, but as Razan sort of spoke to, particularly given it was since 2008, it's been in place for us, so it was a long document, all the sort of things around that. But I think given the context of freedom of speech at universities, I felt a bit of anxiety at the time to sort of think that maybe this was the university attempting to crack down in all sort of fairness. I was the only one invited to be part of sort of a broad working group. We managed to get more student reps involved. We managed to get student assist involved. We then broke off into a smaller group. We met a couple of times. The Guild wrote the first draft of the new charter, and then it was a case of a few little tweaks, but the vast majority of what we really, I say 100% of the essence is there. There's a little bit of wordsmithing around sort of some things, but what we wanted to achieve was sort of adopted through here. So I'm very happy with it. I think it's a much better document than what it was, even if we go to the sort of point of it being student rights and student responsibilities, as opposed to it being sort of a long things as the students undertake to do this and Curtin will undertake to do that. I think it gives us a good solid foundation for future advocacy at the university as well.
Is there anyone else that would like to discuss, comment or question? If not, it looks like not. Okay, I'll read again that the representation board now recommends that the Guild Council endorse the approval of the new Curtin student charter, which was moved by Dylan and seconded by Razan. All those in favour? All those against? That was moved unanimously. Now move on to item 9.2, which is the establishment of an ethnocultural collective, and the motion reads that the representation board A, establish an ethnocultural collective. B, membership of the collective shall be open to all students from culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds. And C, the collective shall be responsibility of the Vice President of Sustainability and Welfare unless and until an ethnocultural officer is established, at which point responsibility shall revert to that officer. The representation board may determine an alternative responsible officer from time to time. Razan, is the movie, would you like to speak to that?
Thank you, Ben. Bettering the experience of CALD students has underlined a lot of my personal work. Until now, CALD students wanting to inquire to the Curtin Student Guild don't have a specific person to refer to. The International Students Committee speaks to and advocates for international students. However, domestic students of CALD backgrounds like myself need someone to advocate for them too. A report last year by the Australian Human Rights Commission has found that governments at all levels across Australia have failed on identifying and addressing racism, and the Australian Institute of Health and Welfare finds that people from CALD backgrounds face greater challenges with regards to mental health and welfare. We have 16 Curtin Student Guild affiliated clubs run by and catered to CALD students, and it is now time that the Curtin Student Guild sees the establishment of an ethnocultural collective to advocate for our students. With this collective, I hope that it can bring advocacy, action and education together to better the student experience.
Dylan, that's the second. Is there anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I'm really proud of this work, and I really want to thank Razan for championing this initiative and pushing for stronger representation of CALD students across the Guild. I think this is a big thing for the Guild to be doing, and I think it's important. I think it's well beyond time that this exists. Establishing a dedicated ethnocultural collective within the Guild, being a space where students from culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds can organise, build community and advocate for change. And this will provide a formal platform for students to lead campaigns against racism and discrimination, to shape Guild and university-owned policies that affect them directly. I think it's a pretty big occasion. I'm really looking forward to seeing it get established under the stewardship of Razan and being able to see it get underway and recruit its members and start its important work. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Thank you, Dylan. Are there any questions or comments that anyone may have? Lauren and then Zoe.
I have a question. Would this be something that the First Nations officer be involved in when there's one present?
I'm going to say we do. So we have a First Nations collective, and I think it's important that you have a collective that focuses wholly on First Nations issues, and a collective that can focus wholly on CALD affairs and on the rest of our equity collectives as well. So you might have crossover I do think that obviously there's a lot of crossover with regards to issues. However, I mean, they can work together, but I think it's still important that there is a First Nations collective that really focuses on First Nations issues so that you can advocate better. That's all.
I'll go Zoe and then Noel.
Yeah, I just wanted to talk about this a bit because I think it's a good idea, but I also think this would be a really great opportunity for the Guild to use this as like an activist body. You know, Australia is a fucking horrifically racist country. You know, attacks on refugees, the lauding of Australia Day, supporting, you know, attacks against Palestinians. So using this collective as, you know, an activist body that actually mobilizes not just Curtin students, but the wider Curtin University community to actually go to these protests, to these actions that are against racism, and not just fighting against racism in the university, but in the wider context of Australia. So I'm just wondering if there's any like actual, I don't know, ideas that are being like for the position about like the wider context and fighting racism in Australia, not just like the university, because it's not just experiencing racism here in the university, it's also outside that, and that does actually impact students a lot. Like it's not just one, they're not separated, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, I do agree, Zoe. I think nothing exists in a bubble. So I do agree with that. I would describe the Curtin Student Guild as a whole as being activist, as being an advocate, as being et cetera, et cetera. I believe, however, that understanding that there is more to CALD communities than just activism is also important. Understanding that there's a lot of things that need to be advocated for CALD students, but ultimately we are the Curtin Student Guild. And therefore my preference would be to have this Curtin student focused while not ignoring the fact that these things don't exist in a bubble. So yes, definitely, but it won't be the only thing. That's how I envision it. I envision it as encompassing many things. And I'd like this collective to take a holistic approach when it comes to approaching the issues that CALD communities face. So more of a holistic approach. Advocacy is one of the things I mentioned as well. But yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Any other comments? Sorry.
I agree advocacy is good, but I'm talking more about like mobilizing students to go out and fight racism and stuff, like mobilizing Curtin students like as a body, because it's the Curtin Student Guild, yes, and it's very important that the Curtin Student Guild takes up racism and things like that, but I think it's super important that it's not just the Curtin Student Guild, but it's the wider student body that is taking up the racism here in Australia as well. And I just wanted to know if there's any like, you know, actions being taken place or like different I don't know, protests and like things like that that you're actually like looking to kind of mobilize the student body and the wider community against. Like I think, yeah, like I think fighting racism is super important, and it's not just like here. We should be mobilizing wider layers of people against it as well, you know?
So like, yeah, I agree. But like, for example, people of CALD backgrounds have the highest drowning rates in Australia. We can't go protest the ocean. So I think there's activism is important. Supporting campaigns is important, but it's not the only thing. So I plan to take a holistic approach to this. Activism is only one aspect, and we do have capacity to take more than one aspect. And these things will rise as it continues, basically. So number one, getting the collective established, and then seeing what actually affects our communities. Hope that again answers your question. So I don't have examples of protests happening in 5 months' time, unfortunately. But when they come up, what was that, sorry? So yeah, and the Guild has endorsed a lot of these, but again, we do have an issue where CALD people are heavily politicized as well. That doesn't mean these political issues don't exist, but again, taking a holistic approach. So Palestinian communities need more than just protesting. There's also welfare. There's also there's a whole bunch of things. So these things, and I do believe that seeing activism as the main thing that CALD communities need can be what's the word? Not belittling, but not understanding that that our communities need more. So again, this is Curtin student based. Obviously, this doesn't mean we won't mobilize. That doesn't mean activism isn't important. It just means I hope to take a holistic approach to this collective. Protesting is good. Just there's other things that are good as well. That's it.
No. You're good? Okay. Is there any final comments anyone would like to make? If not, I'll once again read the motion that the representation board A, establish an ethnocultural collective, B, membership of the collective shall be open to all students from culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds, and C, the collective shall be the responsibility of the Vice President of Sustainability and Welfare, unless and until an ethnocultural collective officer is established, at which point responsibility shall revert to that officer. The representation board may determine an alternative responsible officer from time to time. That is moved by Razan, seconded by Dylan. All those in favour? All those against? That is carried unanimously. Now I'd like to move on to item 9.3, which is the endorsement of the May 24th National Day of Protest, cutting ties with Trump's America. The motion reads that the representation board endorse the upcoming National Day of Protest on May 24th to demand that Australia cut ties with Trump's America. I believe was it Ella that submitted the motion? Okay. Would one of you like to speak on behalf of Ella? Zoe?
Yeah, I think it's super important that the Curtin Student Guild endorses this and actually like publicizes the protests, considering the current political climate that we have. While the majority of Australians have rejected, Trumpian style politics with the defeat of Dutton, Albanese and Trump have actually Trump's come out saying that he's great friends with Albanese, our new Prime Minister, saying that they have a very warm relationship and that he's very excited to continue working with him. And Albanese has also come out saying the same thing. He's happy to start, meeting with Trump in person, working together to continue AUKUS and, continue other projects of the US-Australian alliance. And I think, Albanese hasn't even criticized Trump, despite how fucking racist, sexist, and transphobic this man is. Our government should not have ties to Trump's America. And I think, it's just horrifically fucked. And the Curtin University should definitely endorse this and actually publicize and put it on, the different offices, pages, just to really try and get as many people there as possible. In addition, the protest will also be marching to to counter protest a anti-abortion rally that's being put on by far right groups. And I think this is incredibly important that happens, considering the rise of the far right globally and attempts by the right here in Australia actually to pull abortion rights back into the public discourse and make it a question of like politics and things like that, when it really is just a human right that women and people who give birth should have.
Dylan, somebody would like to speak to this motion.
Happily. The Curtin Student Guild has consistently expressed concerns about AUKUS and the growing influence of Trump-era policies on Australia's foreign and domestic agenda. The National Day of Protest is an opportunity for students to engage on these issues, and the motion notes the Guild's endorsement of the event in line with our broader commitment to student-led political expression.
Thank you, Dylan. And Bridget, would you like to speak to us, the seconder?
I think the motion speaks to itself.
Thank you. Are there any further questions or comments, Jack?
Yeah, just one. I think it's important that Dylan mentioned before AUKUS. I think that's going to be because it's not just overall the ties between Australia and the US have only gotten closer over the last few years. And even though some of the rhetoric might have changed with Trump in power, I think that there's still this ongoing close relationship that's only going to expand. We're only going to see further militarization of Australian society. Just one point I wanted to make as well. I think at the moment, actually, the key force that is bringing Trumpism into Australia at the moment, it wasn't even necessarily Peter Dutton, but it's actually the university administrations, which have, part of what the Trump's sort of project in America has been the kind of attacks on student activism, the locking up of student activists involved in the encampments last year. And I think we've seen elements of that coming into Australia, particularly at UWA, attacking student activists at UWA. For standing up about Palestine. So I think it's important that students are mobilised about this as well, because students are part of the kind of overall Trumpist attack on freedom of speech and on sort of left-wing progressive politics. This is kind of a key role for that, and that's why I think it's important that the Curtin Student Guild is supporting this and is also, can do what it can to mobilise students to get involved.
Thank you, Jack. Is there any final comments from anyone? If not, I'll once again read the motion that the Representation Board endorse the upcoming National Day of Protest on May 24 to demand that Australia cut ties with Trump's America. This is moved by Dylan and seconded by Bridget. All those in favour? All those against? That was carried unanimously. I'll now move on to item 10, which is general business. I don't believe there is any general business that anyone wants to discuss. I'll move on to item 11, which is the meeting evaluation, which was done by Cooper.
I think meeting went well. Alignment of the agenda fits with our values, advocacy, the student charter. That's also integrity. What was on? Autonomy. Students making decisions on student matters. Values, also diversity, the ethnocultural collective, getting that passed is a big step in diversity and representation in that area. Apart from that, I think all went well.
Thank you, Cooper. All right, moving to item 12, which is the next meeting. The next ordinary meeting of the Representation Board will be held on the 19th of June in University Council Chambers. And with that, I'd like to close the meeting at 6:25 p.m.